It's a battery, right?
Yeah.
It's bigger than the phone.
It's bigger than the usual ones, yeah. I'll let people see it if they want. Oh, is that intentional?
Lean on the trackpad and see if that works.
No. Oh, the keys. Oh,
Password is
yep.
it's not a big secret anyways. There you go.
That's a very
Okay.
secure password.
Yeah.
Now you need a theme song.
Need what?
You need a theme song.
Theme song. I'm not a singer. Like,
You have to sing it. You just need a theme song
oh,
somehow or something.
I'm not a listener either, so I don't know songs. Probably IT crowd would be best. Is there like a cue when I start?
No, just when you feel good, man. Just feel.
Q W W E R. Yeah. Yeah. People saw it. Okay. So I'm Ilya. I work at BIMI. I'm doing software, operations, and a bit of mentoring. I'm also author of the next generation shell, or in short NGS. You will see some clues here. What I'm going to talk about? I'm going to talk about perspective of how you can look at things. And I think it should be useful for everybody, so you could avoid situations which you wouldn't like. I really don't want you to focus on the examples as something which defines information loss, because information loss is a huge topic, and I'm giving you just a few examples here and there. So, by the show of hands, who have seen code like this? Empty catch close. Aha. Aha, okay, I see, that's a common problem. Okay. Who would agree with one of these words for describing that code? Yeah, but less. Okay. So, yeah, so this might be correct, but I actually think that all these words are inexact and they don't tell exactly what happened there. And I think if you name something, it lets you think about this more easily. So let's name this. If you remember one slide from this presentation, this one, the important. I call it information loss, and I define it as follows. At some point in time, you have the information, and it's easily accessible. And then later, when you need that information, you either don't have it, or it's not accessible as easily as it was. So why is it bad? Well, you have two choices. Either you can recover that information, and it will cost you, and you don't want that, or in some cases you will just not be able to recover the information. So the first group of examples, the first place where information loss can occur is between the head of the programmer and the code he or she writes. And that means that later another programmer, this color is justified, okay? Another programmer will have hard time to understand what the original idea was. So that means that the original idea of the first programmer is not easily accessible now. Well, I think there are two big subcategories. It's either the fault of the programmer who wrote the code, or the fault of the programming language that he or she were using. So for the first case, that's usually just plain incompetence. Okay, let's see some particular examples. Misnamed variables or functions or classes. Well, you have to dig to understand what they do. Magic numbers. So the original author of the code knew what the number means. And when he or she wrote that as a number, the meaning of that was lost. So whoever will look at this code will not understand what that magic number means. Missing comments. And here I mean not comments here I will look into the array. No, I mean the comments that explain why, because these are the most important comments and the hardest to recover. Let's say you have external API. The code talks to external API, and the documentation says it returns an array. And occasionally it actually returns null because Java programmers decided they don't want another allocation, and for empty arrays they return null. And if your code handles that, it's really unclear why. So you should comment why. Another thing, when the programmer does not understand either the language or the library or the framework or all of that, and not only code becomes verbose, it becomes very misleading because the programmers that know the language and the library and the framework, it's completely unexpected for them, and they're actually looking, okay, why is it done the different way? Why is it like more lines or something? Okay, let's be a bit specific on that. Okay, so old code, it was like about 7 lines. And then you need to figure out, is this for, together with this if, and together with this break, actually doing find, which you can do with .find. And I just guess the original author did not know about find. Okay, but that's, you know, small company and all that. Okay, let's look at the big ones. How about Amazon? Okay, in Ruby, you can use rescue, which is like catch in other languages. And in Ruby, you can specify the variable that gets the information, or you can not specify that. So by the time that this rescue runs, there is already no information about what happened. Okay, to make things worse, the author now guesses what happened. Because there are 2 system calls, one is open, another is read, and there are plenty of things that could go wrong, and the author chooses end in this case, when this actually could be permissions or endless loop of links, or this could be a directory. Okay, let's look at the other group, which is things imposed by programming language. Maybe you know something about unnamed function parameters, like in Bash or previously in Perl. Unordered map. Some languages support that and some languages don't support. And ordered map, I mean if you have a hash or map or dictionary, and when you iterate that, the iteration goes in the order that the items were inserted originally. And sometimes you need that functionality, and if the language does not support it, you just have a bunch of code which does just that. And when you have more code, the original idea gets lost in this code, and it's more difficult to arrive at. Okay, limited data structures, you know, in Bash typically, and you see the workarounds. It's just a lot of code, it's noisy, and you also get lost, and it's hard to get to the original idea. In Java, when you write a method, and this method has a parameter x of type t. So, and there you can get either something of type t or null, and you need to check it, and you don't have a way to specify that. There are some hints which you can give to the IDE, but it's like a second-level citizens. Asynchronous computing model also makes it very hard to express yourself in a straightforward manner. So JavaScript had callbacks, which were notoriously difficult to work with, and then promises were a bit better, and then now there's async await. I will not comment on the wall thing. That's not for now. Okay, another bunch of problems is what I call accidental programming languages. Here's the life cycle of this thing. There is some smart guy says, okay, I want to do domain-specific language. It will be very small. I make it very small. I will not add any hard stuff in there. I make a small syntax for that. Simple syntax. It's just a config file. Then that thing becomes popular, and then there's feedback from users. What you did is not powerful enough. And now you have a programming language on top of configuration file syntax. Ooh, no. I know the password.
Yeah,
That's why I told you.
Okay. So this is an example how you do loop in Ansible, which is actually a YAML with substitutions and loops here, just like that. How about Go? So anybody heard of Kubernetes? I guess, yeah, right? Okay. So there's 2% of code in Kubernetes which says, I'm not handling errors here. And after all this code, it's really getting a bit harder to arrive at the original idea that author had in mind, because you have like a bunch of 3 lines blocks which says, I'm not handling the errors. Okay, and another chunk. I'm just giving you some points here and there, just to give you some taste of what information loss might look like. Okay, empty cache loss, we've been there, done that. Error, you know that your program had an error, and now you return exit code 0, which says there was no error. You've been there. Okay, so, and authors of tsort apparently decided that that is the correct way to do it. I'm 99% sure that it is not. Okay, and from another perspective, the same thing. You run something, and then you look into the exit codes. Let's say in Bash. You run this left bracket, which is a test, and you gave it something, and then you have then and else. So then and else are actually 2 branches. And if you look at the manual of the test command, it can return 3 different exit codes. 0 for yes, 1 for no, and 2, like in this case, for syntax error, because there's no such thing like --e. Okay? By the way, in NGS, that will throw an exception, because NGS checks exit codes. Okay, another thing, confusion between standard output and standard error. If you're sending your errors to standard output, that's not good. This is semantically incorrect. You're confusing people. Same thing if you send your standard output to standard error, also bad. Every time you convert anything to text, it probably loses some information. It's usually about how accessible that is. So if you convert some data structure into text to show it to people, if you need that data back as a program, you need to parse it. It makes it a bit harder. I say that when you use GUI, you are already losing some information, because it's very hard to, like, for example, recreate what you did. What I plan to do in NGS for GUI, there will be textual representation. By the way, I think that everybody should do that, every GUI. Any operations that you perform in GUI should have textual representation. It should go to history. You can copy paste, you can send to friend, all the good stuff which comes with text. Okay, so just to show you that the topic is very broad, some other like less related examples. Somebody created AWS instance, and he or she probably knew what it was for, what it is doing. And if it's untagged and there's no information on that, all the other people don't know what happened. Use of incorrect terminology when you talk to each other. So when you transformed your thoughts into incorrect words, some information was already lost, maybe all of it. Averages. Averages are containing notoriously minimum or to none useful information. So better use percentiles. How about human memory? You remember something one day and not the next day. Focus. You're watching a television or a lecture, and then you wander just for a few moments and thought about something else. So the information that was transmitted to you is now lost. There's also cases when losing information is intentional, like employees which leave without notice, and whatever they had in their head is now gone. Lossy compression, JPEG. It might not be a problem if you don't ever want the picture with original quality. But if you have JPEG, you don't have the option. So if you decide you want the original, you don't have it. And sometimes context provides some of the information. So for example, short parameter names are okay to use. How would you avoid information loss? Well, maybe there are other rules, but first of all, you need to think in terms of information loss. Just practice it a bit, and you look at several projects, several situations, and you'll get it. Capture the information. As soon as you can, capture the information so it will not be lost. Log exceptions. If you have any exception, probably you should log it. Code reviews. That makes the information to flow from the head of the programmer into the code. And if it did not happen originally, when the code was written, it will be in code review, because the person who is doing code review will ask, okay, what is it? I don't understand what you wrote here. So it should be fixed. And document. And document especially the things which will be the hardest to recover. Like, for example, requirements. You can't probably understand what were the requirements from the code. So you just don't have it anywhere. Assumptions, also important. Decisions, architecture, things which are not clear from the code, which you have, probably. Are you converting anything to text? Well, it depends where it goes. If it goes to human, it's maybe okay. If it goes to another machine, probably should think about serialization, because it's much easier to deserialize than parse something. I know it's Perl conference, but serialization is to be considered. Are you creating another DSL? Well, if it becomes popular, you will have requests from people to make it more powerful. And if you make it based on configuration file, that's not going to be good, probably. Thanks. So if we have additional time, and I think we have, okay. How much time we have? Okay. So bonus slides. Okay, accidental serialization. Okay, here you do some program, whatever, and your boss comes in and says, okay, quick, we need to make this modification. We don't have any time. We have a name field, and now it's supposed to be several people. And you say, okay, I'll just put several people with comma, and I'm done. And then you discover that in some situations, people names contain comma. Sorry?
3 commas.
3 commas, yeah, 3 commas, backslash before, but then someone will come with a backslash in name. Compilation, another form of losing information. Now you don't have the source, you can't understand what the author means. Well, you have some clues because of what it does, but not the original. And it's hard. Okay, any questions? Are you like all shocked or like?
Very interesting.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
It's not really a question, it's an example that comes to mind. For instance, sometimes you get to write short scripts or something like that, and to enough people, when they comments, let's say Unix comments interactively, they use short options comments.
Yeah.
But when you write software, I would find it better to use the long options because they give you information about what it's doing. People do not actually familiar with the commands, they read down, they see just short one-letter option, they don't understand really what it's doing.
Yeah, so yeah, if your audience is somebody who will not understand the short options, you should consider that. Also, some people say it's the other way around. I'll write what I write and you go and read the manual page. Well, it's trade-off and you should consider that. I think that since you only write it usually once and the program is read more times, you should be more considerate about how people will read the program. And if your audience doesn't know about short switches and does know about the long ones, maybe it's the way to go. Yeah?
What about commit messages? I'm not sure you mentioned that.
I didn't. Commit messages, yes.
Yeah, there's a recent example where IRC.log, the history was no longer accessible, and there were a lot of messages
or C logs.
So you basically had a commit fixable is reference on IRC. But that's also applicable to issue trackers, because issue trackers can change over time.
So you say it should go into the commit message itself? Probably, yeah. That way you minimize the chances of losing that information, yeah. Okay then. Next speaker, please.
That was accidental. Microphone loss.
Yes. Also kind of information because the next speaker will be able to talk. That's probably for you. I think it goes somewhere here. And the other, no, that one goes to a pocket, and this is the microphone. I think the guy there will.
Does the clicker work for this? Yeah, it works. Great. I'm just surprised when things work so well. All right, so let's take this. So I can start then. I suppose in the. Is that okay? Okay. Wait for them.